Doctors of Reddit, what is the weirdest thing a patient wouldn't admit? Before 9/11, I rotated through a Navy ID clinic at a large medical center. A sailor popped HIV plus and told me that he must have contracted it by backing up onto a doorknob while naked in the head on the ship. Part of the workup was swabbing the urethra, anus, and throat. The sailor tested positive for GC, gonorrhea, on all 3 sites. He denied any human sexual activity in 2/3 of those orifices, leading one to believe he abused that poor doorknob in a ferocious manner. In general, all drug users are pretty transparent with us. They understand we're not cops. Heroin to coke, fentanyl, or what have you. Except meth. Probably the paranoia. But meth users almost always lie. As just one example, I have heard my partner must have sprinkled a bit into my coffee breakfast a minimum of 3 times. I'm a paramedic, and so many lie to me. I have to swear myself blue that I don't care and ask cops to leave the room for a moment. I've been told I was stupid for not knowing the difference between a drug user and just sleeping. Dude, you slept through someone doing CPR and me sticking a needle in your arm, and the only thing that woke you up was Narcan. Am doctor. But this is a med school story. During an ER rotation, a guy came in with a banana up his butt. It went in too far and he needed medical attention. He swore up and down that he tripped, fell on the stairs, and accidentally sat on the banana. After we fished the banana out, my attending at the time came over and said to me, just before he accidentally fell onto the banana, a condom magically got in the way. Not a doctor, but worked in a hospital for a long time. Had a patient come in who had overdosed on heroin. We were able to get him stabilized, but he had necrotizing fasciitis in his pectoral from injecting there. He was septic and honestly a bit of an asshole. He kept trying to tell us the reason he was there was because of a motorcycle accident. We all knew, but he was in absolute denial. He eventually healed up and transferred out after a couple of months. He came back about 6 months later to say thank you to all of us and to apologize for all the lies and assholish behavior. Seems it was enough to get him out of that life and onto a new one. I think about him now and then and hope he stayed clean. Nurse here. Had parents bring their 3-year-old son to the emergency department for 1 month of abdominal pain that kept getting worse. I asked all the routine questions for this complaint. Lots of questions about his poop. Was it bloody? Diarrhea? Mucus? When was his last bowel movement? Any changes in the stool? They denied any other concerning symptoms, but abdominal pain. We did blood work, ultrasound, x-ray. Everything came back completely normal, but the kid was intermittently screaming in pain, curled in a ball. Over the next 5 hours, I continued to repeat the same questions and asked repeatedly if there was anything else going on that they could think of. Nope. The kid just didn't seem well, but we had no reason to keep him. We decided to watch him a little longer, let him eat. The kid ate a bunch, PBJ, apple juice, crackers, popsicle, with no pain, so we decided to send them home. I brought in the discharge paperwork and was about to start going over instructions when the dad said, you know, for the past 3 months he's had a lot of worms in his poop. Worms. Fing worms. You spent 6+ hours denying worms. I literally just turned around and walked out of the room without saying a word. I was laughing almost to the point of tears. Could not wait to tell my resident. Deworming medications, a shitload of wasted time, and they were on their way. This one is sad, from my old roommate. A girl had a very large lump on her breast that she didn't tell the doctors about. She actually went to the hospital for migraines, saying they were getting increasingly bad. When they found the lump, they asked why she didn't mention it. She said she knew it was going to kill her eventually, but she just wanted to get rid of the migraines because they were causing her a lot of pain in her last months. My younger sister is friends with one of our neighbors. She went to their house and found this girl's aunt from the farms visiting. The aunt was sitting on the sofa, half topless, and one of her breasts was visible. My sister noticed that the breast was ashy gray and stiff. She told her friend how hard it must be for the aunt to be going through breast cancer. The conversation went like this. Sister, it must be hard for the aunt to go through breast cancer. Oh no, she doesn't have cancer. Yeah, she does. That breast is not supposed to be still there. It should have been removed already. Friend, Aunt says it's just a boil in her breast. It will go away. It's cancer. What did the doctor say? She hasn't been to the doctor. The aunt was gone in 3 months. The cancer had spread and she passed away without even going to the doctors. One of my first on-call shifts as an anesthesiology resident, a patient came to the OR in the middle of the night for incision and drainage of an abscess in his jaw. The case itself was uneventful, but as we were removing the endotracheal tube, he coughed up a fair amount of blood, not unexpected given the nature of the operation. Some of this blood managed to bypass my facial protective equipment and ended up in my eye. Yes, it was disgusting. In the recovery unit, I asked him all the relevant questions regarding IV drug use, unprotected sexual activity, and transmissible infections. His response to all of those was, of course, a resounding no. His blood work, however, told a different story when the results came back positive for hepatitis C. Suffice it to say, getting Morgan-lensed in the emergency department at 4 a.m. near the tail end of a 24-hour call shift was the closest thing to Chinese waterboarding that I've ever had to endure. For those of you who are wondering, I luckily did not contract Hep C after this incident. NAD, but I was present at the hospital when the patient lied to the doctor and nurse. After the ER visit, I was admitted to the hospital just in time for lunch. There was an elderly lady in the room with me. She finished her lunch and, seeing that I hadn't touched mine, she asked if she could eat mine too. A few hours later, a nurse came into the room to check the lady's blood sugar, which was, of course, off the charts. She had received insulin before her meal, and before I arrived, so I didn't know about the diabetes. But it didn't cover both meals. The nurse called the doctor because she couldn't understand how her sugar suddenly spiked. The lady persistently denied eating 2 meals. Woman in gynecology who suddenly presented with chlamydia. Had been married to her husband for 15 years and never slept with anyone else. On tracing, husband also tested positive and was plainly evasive. The woman asked where she could have gotten it from, and when told it was an STI, proceeded to completely deny that her husband could have given it to her, even though he also needed to be treated and was uncomfortable whenever the source of the infection was brought up. Denial was easier than facing up to the fact he cheated. She proceeded through follow-ups afterwards, blanking whenever it was mentioned that she had had chlamydia. I am a doctor. Not a single random thing up my ass is weird to me anymore. I've heard or seen it all. Nor is it that surprising when somebody is wacko enough to claim they got Lyme disease sexually from their husband, who got it vertically from his mother, and that's why they are sterile. If you aren't aware, this is bonkers. The actual weirdest thing for me was that one time when a severely obese person just refused to admit they ate anything but 1 small salad a day. It just comes down to math. You cannot get up to 500 pounds unless you put 500 pounds of stuff into you at a decent pace. Plus, we found a snack wrapper in the inaccessible folds of your panis. Jeebus? From the other side, I went to a podiatrist, and he told me, among other things, to stop wearing sandals. At that point, I actually had thrown away my last pair of sandals and switched completely to slides, so my response was, I don't wear sandals. Only my sandal tan lines from an earlier vacation were still very prominent. He gave me a very exaggerated, Kai, and told me again to stop wearing sandals. It took until my next shower that I finally put 2 and 2 together and felt so embarrassed. I still laugh cringe whenever I see my sandal tan lines. Edit. Copying part of my reply to another comment to address some of the comments I've received. I was told by my podiatrist not to wear thong-style sandals or Crocs. If I must wear sandals, wear slide-style sandals with arch support like OOFOS, and just wear them around the house. I don't know the reason why he said this. I am not a medical professional and didn't bother to ask why, because I do not care. I went in for a running injury, and this was just one of many suggestions. Questions and concerns should be directed towards a podiatrist or someone claiming to be one on Reddit. I worked at a hospital on the transport desk. I dealt with patients face-to-face sometimes when they were heading back home or to nursing homes. They'd come to my little office window to tell me they were done with their appointment. It was a cute job, actually. Lol. Anyway, we had this one woman who was a nightmare. She had a bunch of medical issues, but was the type to enjoy it, you know? I don't say this often, but honestly, she was an awful woman. I have so many stories about her. She came by the window to book in to go home. This was at the height of COVID too, and I told her there was an hour wait because we could only travel one person at a time for safety reasons. I'm immune to COVID. I laughed so hard, and she put a complaint in about me. One thing I noticed a lot when I worked in allergy was patients lying about taking allergy pills. First off, if you take an allergy pill before an appointment that's scheduled for allergen testing, cancel the appointment. We're testing up to 113 things at once. It takes a long time to set up, and you have to sit for the next 20 minutes and watch for a reaction. It's a colossal waste of time for everyone involved. You can try and lie all you want, but we know. You think I'm going to set all that stuff up and not have a control? At least one of the sticks is a histamine. You will react to it. Unless you've taken an allergy pill. No reaction, the test is invalid. And don't even think about pulling that with your kids. You think I liked setting up all this, listening to the kids scream while they try and fight you off, then cry for the next 20 minutes, only for nothing. It was probably an accident, and sometimes things happen. Don't keep the appointment, and if for some reason you do, don't lie about something as mundane as a Zyrtec. My wife is an ER doc and has hundreds of stories about people lying about things that are very obviously not true. Countless stories of people swearing they don't do drugs even though she's looking at their blood test results. Or criminals who were bitten by police dogs who were doing nothing wrong and can't understand why the dog would have bitten them. But my favorite was the guy with a Frank's hot sauce bottle stuck up his butt. It was full of hot sauce. He told her that he had gotten out of the shower and was cutting across the kitchen to go get a towel. He slipped, knocked the bottle off the counter, and landed on it. She said, "Okay, now tell me again what happened." She asked him to tell her the story 4 times, and he stuck to it. I guess their new slogan could be, "I put that shit in everything." Not a weird one, but one night we were at a bar and the guy next to me was going on and on about how he's only 30 but had it all figured out. He was retired, set for life, and never had to work again. Kept bragging about how great his life is. Nice guy, but a little annoying. We let him talk and just smiled and nodded along for a couple of hours before we left. The very next morning, my wife walks into the exam room to see a patient. Before looking up, she says, "It says that you need an excuse for work because you're not feeling well today." She looked up, and it was the guy who supposedly never had to work again. She said the look on his face was priceless. She gave him the note for work. This is from my point of view as a patient, but I feel like the doctors 100% knew I was lying. When I was 16, I overdosed on chlorprothoxine, an antipsychotic that I was taking in the evening to sleep better. I was supposed to take one 25 milligrams pill. One day, I took a lot of them. I don't remember the exact number, but it had to be over 10. I got so sick, my parents came to pick me up from the dorm and ended up taking me straight to the hospital. I was fainting every few seconds. I would take 2 steps and faint again. They were holding me up, led me to the car, and drove me all the way to the hospital in my city, which was almost 2 hours away. I don't know why they didn't take me to the one that was like 5 minutes away instead. I was a minor, so it was still a children's hospital. They suspected I was drunk, but I didn't have any alcohol in my blood. They tried to get me to tell them what happened, but I basically couldn't talk. They found out my kidneys had collapsed. It took them over 30 minutes to take my blood because they couldn't get any out of me. I don't remember anything and know most of that from what my parents told me. When I came to my senses a few days later, after sleeping 90% of the time, I told them the reason this happened was that I woke up from a nightmare and thought I hadn't taken my pill yet. So I took a second one by accident. I was scared of getting sent to a mental hospital for a suicide attempt, so that's why I lied. My parents thought I was bullshitting, which I was. My mom is a nurse at the same hospital. For whatever reason, the doctors believed me and tried to explain to my parents that, yes, it's possible to overdose this much from one extra pill. I am a terrible liar and feel like there had to be a way to test how much I took. My mom even requested the test be done, but they talked her out of it because they claimed in order to do that, they would have to send my urine or blood, I don't remember which, to a different city that has a testing center, and it would be too much of a hassle. I find that so weird. I feel like it's bullshit, and they had to know I took more. There's no way my kidneys would collapse from 25 extra milligrams of antipsychotics. Had a lady come to the ER about 3 times for dizziness and poor balance. Her alcohol level was about 0.23 each time, but she refused to admit she had been drinking. Her husband went to bat for her, insisting she'd been sober for 9 months. Neither would admit that she relapsed despite ample opportunity to come clean and not lose face. They stuck to the story that her body must be endogenously producing ethanol because they read about it online. They demanded she be admitted for more tests. I told them how great an idea that was. I explained that as an inpatient, unable to get outside food and drink, we could keep her overnight and simply recheck her alcohol level in the morning. If her body was producing its own alcohol, of course, it would go up. If she had been drinking surreptitiously and did not have access to booze in the hospital, of course, it would go down. Her husband thought that was a brilliant idea, and I watched her face completely sink. Checkmate liar. When I was a surgical resident rotating at the local VA, I went to the ER to evaluate a gentleman in his 70s with constipation. He was a highly decorated and high-ranking vet. An X-ray showed a large dildo up his butt. He, of course, said he had no idea how it got up there. Maybe he fell on it. He didn't know. For the lay people, it is very difficult to get an object out of the anus rectum despite what it may seem. Often, if you can't remove the object, you have to take the person to the operating room to get it out. Anyways, we sedated him in the ER, and I managed to get the 8-inch black dildo out. It was smeared with poop. I immediately threw it away in the kick bucket. The patient decided he was done, got up, leaned against his IV pole in his hospital gown, ass hanging in the wind, and started making for the exit. But of course, because he was sedated, he didn't make it very far and ended up crashing on the floor. He was admitted for observation overnight. I never found out if his wife or family ever found out the truth about why he was in the hospital.
Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to see more.